Hey, everybody, and welcome to Savannah Book Festival's virtual author event this evening. I'm Chris Hummer, the executive producer of local content for WSAV. And over the years, I have had the pleasure and honor, oh, it's just so many times of interviewing many of the authors who have appeared at the Savannah Book Festival. I'm excited to continue that honor tonight with Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child, authors of the #1 New York Times bestselling Agent Pendergast series. And I can tell from the comments there are a lot of Pendergast fans out there. So their latest book, right here, it's called Bloodless. And see the Spanish moss? It is set in Savannah, Georgia. So you guys, these authors, their thrillers stand heads and shoulders above their rivals, and that's quoted by Publishers Weekly. Preston and Child Relic, oh my gosh, that book and movie scared me to death. And The Cabinet of Curiosities were chosen by readers in the National Public Radio poll as being among the 100 greatest thrillers ever written. And like I said, Relic was made into a #1 box office hit movie that scared me to death. They're co-authors of the famed Pendergast series, as we just said, and their recent novels include The Scorpion's Tale, Crooked River, Old Bones, and Verses for the Dead. In addition to his novels, Preston writes about archaeology for The New Yorker and National Geographic magazines. Lincoln Child is a Florida resident and former book editor who has published 7 novels of his own, including such bestsellers as Full Wolf Moon and Deep Storm. Over the next 45 minutes, I'll be speaking with both gentlemen who will later answer your questions. We're excited about that. To submit a question, just click the Ask a Question button along the bottom of your screen and type it in. We will do our best to get in as many questions as possible. So please welcome New York Times bestselling authors Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. Oh, I like that. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Hi.
All right, so let's.
Are you Chris?
I'm well, and I'm so excited to talk to you gentlemen again. For everybody out there, we have hundreds of people online tonight. I know they are book lovers. They are probably a lot of writers themselves. And we talked about this a few weeks ago, but I really wanted to dig down a little bit more. Writing can be a very insular, process, and a lot of authors fall in love with their words, and they don't want anybody to, mess with their words. But you guys are authors on your own, and then you come together and write these amazing thrillers. So let's talk about that process. First of all, how does it start? Do you, since you don't live near each other, do you like get on Zoom and say, hey, I've got this idea? Do you write outlines? How do you handle the writing process from coming up with the concept to shipping it off to the publisher for the first time?
Well, we don't do it by Zoom or by FaceTime because we've seen enough of each other's mugs over the years to make that unnecessary. But we do use the phone a lot. The process has changed over the years, but what usually happens is we already have 2 or 3, ideas that are germinating, and we pick one depending on whether it's a Pendergast series or another book, and then we bounce it back and forth for a while and try to whip it into shape. And eventually, we each try and give the other person the job of writing it. And we see who wins.
And what is your take on that?
Well, when we were writing Relic, we hadn't worked out the system yet. And even though we live a couple of thousand miles apart, we decided we should work this out together. So I went to New York, where Lincoln was living, and we sat on the porch of his house at Sycamore Terrace, overlooking some lake. I can't remember the name of it. And we cracked out a beautiful bottle of single malt whiskey, and we poured a few glasses and started sipping and talking about what fine fellows we were and complaining about our editor and our agent and our publisher and everything else. And no work got done. So we realized that if we're going to write these books together, we have to be physically apart. Because when we're together, nothing gets done.
Well, when you guys finally decided to do this and you pitched the idea of writing together to your publishers, your editors, what was the reaction? Were they like, yeah? Or were they like, oh, goodness, no?
The very first book, Relic, that had a long and complicated birth, and I'll give you the very short version of it. I edited Doug's nonfiction book when I was at St. Martin's Press as an editor, and he was at the Museum of Natural History in New York. I tapped him to write a behind-the-scenes tour of the museum because I was a huge fan of, the the place where Indiana Jones hangs his pith helmet when he's not out desecrating tombs, etc. And he wrote this book called Dinosaurs in the Attic, which is a really great, and still is a really great book about the backstage history of the museum and its characters. And I insisted he give me a tour of it, but he would only do it late at night because, I wanted to see everything. And I can't say everything we saw, but I turned to him and said, "This is the scariest building in the whole world, perfect place for a thriller." And he'd already submitted to me the idea for a mystery called Zero at the Bone. And I told him that murder mysteries are really hard to do. They don't sell a lot of copies unless you're Agatha Christie, P.D. James. What about a techno thriller, which we both enjoyed reading? And what if we wrote it together? Because Doug is really good at writing. He's very voluble. He writes quickly. He doesn't have any hangups, at least none that show on the page about writing. And I'm just the opposite, or I was at the time, having been an editor for too many years. And so eventually the book got half written. And I thought being an ex-publishing editor, I would have no problem finding an agent for us. Since I knew a lot of people in the business. And then to my shock and surprise, the first two friends of mine who were agents turned it down. And that's when Doug moved to New Mexico and said, sayonara. You want to pick it up there, Doug?
Is that how you remember it?
Well, it was, I started out, I took myself very seriously as a writer. I was going to win a Nobel Prize or Pulitzers or whatever. And writing a thriller like this about a brain-eating monster in a museum, I thought, well, this is not going to help my reputation. So I told Lincoln, look, I loved writing this book with you, but let's just not put my name on it. And whatever he finally found this agent. I said, whatever your agent does, for God's sakes, don't show it to my editor at Simon & Schuster, Michael Korda, because I'm supposed to be writing a nonfiction book for him. So what does Lincoln's agent do? He gets the manuscript, and the first thing he does is put my name back on it and sends it to my editor. So I got a call from Michael Korda, who had a very droll sense of humor, and he said, "Doug, I have a really interesting coincidence to report. There's another guy out there named Douglas Preston circulating the manuscript about a brain-eating monster in a museum. Isn't that hilarious? What a coincidence." And there was a silence, and he said, "It is a coincidence, isn't it?" And I said, "Michael, wait, Michael, let me explain." He said, "No, don't explain. I just want you to listen to something very important for you to hear, very important and instructive." So I'm listening on the phone. I hear this rustling, and then I heard this thump, very loud thump. And I said, "Michael, what was that? What happened?" He said, "That was your manuscript entering the wastebasket." Now get back to writing the nonfiction book and forget about this stuff, the brain-eating monsters. But the fact is that I discovered that I really loved writing these novels. And you know what? Life is about doing what you love, not about what you think is important or groovy or whatever. So Lincoln and I started writing these books together, and I love working with him. He's a very charming fellow, especially when he's 2,000 miles away. And we've had this wonderful series. And this book, Bloodless, is now the 20th Pendergast book in the series. He was introduced in Relic, and that was back in the mid-90s. Long time.
Is your personal relationship more like a siblings, or is it more like a marriage? You seem to be you seem to rib on each other a lot. I like that.
I think it's like there were jokes we used to make about this relationship. I don't think we can make anymore. It's like an old married couple, that knows each other's, favorite lines and bête noirs and everything else. And we roll our eyes when we hear the other one launching into the story for it 1,000 times. On the other hand, we can finish each other's sentences in a good way, and that really helps a lot when it comes to writing joint books. Most people, I think, have no conception of how a novel it can be written together. Nonfiction is a different animal, but the fact is we've done it so often that we write it together just seamlessly. I'll write a sequence, or Doug will write a certain character's point of view, and then we edit each other's and we learn from how each other work. And so I guess it's a marriage in that sense, except there's no prenup involved.
I see. Well, Doug, what is that like when have you guys ever come to a disagreement with like the writing?
Oh,
Like, has it ever
never.
gotten ugly?
Oh, no, 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 we never argue. We have a perfect marriage. We never argue. We this is another reason why it's good that we're 2,000 miles apart, because we can't actually physically come to blows. We have had, well, we've had some pretty big disagreements. Unfortunately, I've had to construct Lincoln a little bit in the finer points of the English grammar and language. No, I'm kidding.
Those
Actually,
are fighting words.
yeah, no, actually,
For an editor,
why,
yes.
the reason why our partnership works is that we trust each other. And when Lincoln comes back to me and says, "Doug, this is awful what you've written," I'll get all pissed off. We might have a few words, but in the end, I have to accept it. And he massacres my little darlings, and I massacre his. And I challenge him, he challenges me. And as a result, I think what we produce is much tighter. I think our prose style is better than what we can write individually. And it really works, but it only works because we trust each other. If we didn't trust each other, it wouldn't work at all.
Okay. Well, let's go back to 150 years ago when Relic came out. Who came up with Pendergast? Who came up with the character?
What happened was Doug wrote the opening chapters based on very brief outlines I had given him. And there was a murder in the museum, and it was being investigated by two New York policemen. And they were both either Irish or Italian, I can't remember which, but they were just travesties of cliched New York cops. And I said to Doug, Doug, I like these chapters a lot, but these two cops, and instantly I could see him getting defensive. The crackling over the phone waves was instantly, sensitive. And I said, they're just too similar. They're like I don't know. I probably said Beavis and Butthead at the time. I'm not sure, it was so long ago. Mutt and Jeff. Can't you make one different from the other? And he instantly said, "What, you mean like a albino from New Orleans?" sarcastically. And I thought about that and said, well, maybe we can work with that. And of course, Pendergast is not an albino. We have no problem with people who are, but he is very pale complected, and he has very, very blonde hair. And the thing that I'll always be grateful to Doug for doing was that he immediately took him from being a cliche to being totally outside the box. And the comments he made were the kind that of withering observations that somebody, a literary critic might have observing this farcical investigation from afar. And there's an old film called Green for Danger, which has a cop just like that. It takes place during the Blitz. And right away I said, wow, this is a character we can develop. But beyond that, I don't think Doug and I can really say, because I immediately added to that, then Doug added to that, and then Pendergast took the reins from us and said, excuse me, I'm going to develop myself. So we really, neither one of us can really take full credit for thinking him up. Right, Doug?
What's your take on that, Doug?
Well, that is really about exactly what it's like. I mean, after I made that sarcastic comment about the very, the albino or whatever, and Lincoln said, well, maybe we can work with that. And he just in 15 minutes talking about this character, he just formed in front of us. We didn't know his backstory. We didn't even know his first name for at least 2 or 3 books, but we knew who he was. And that's one of the lessons that all writers must learn, is that backstory is not the same as character. You know, some writers think if you create a backstory, you've created a character, and that's not true. With Pendergast, we had no backstory. We knew nothing about him except that he was from New Orleans, wealthy, an eccentric, an aesthete, and so forth. But we didn't know anything about his family or history. And I remember Lincoln, at a certain point in one of our early novels, Pendergast has built a memory palace, which some of you may know of. It's a device to organize your memory, and it was introduced in the 16th century by a famous Renaissance mathematician. And I remember Lincoln created this memory palace for Pendergast, and I was reading what he'd written, and at a certain point, Pendergast is moving through this memory palace, which is a reconstruction in his mind of their old house in New Orleans, and he sees the door to his brother's room nailed shut. And I called up Lincoln. I said, Lincoln, why is the door nailed shut? And he said, I don't know. It just is. And that eventually became the story of Diogenes, Pendergast's brother.
I like how talking with you gentlemen, it's I think a lot of people are like, if you write a story, you have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I have to know exactly where I'm going. But and the things that happen in your books, you do, but the character of Pendergast informs things a lot too. How has he changed since the first? Like I mean, you may say he hasn't.
He's been forced to change by events that we have laid upon him. Doug, did you say that backstory informed character? Did I get that right?
No, I was saying that there's a difference between backstory and character.
Oh, okay.
I mean, obviously the two have to work together, but a lot of novelists, beginning novelists, I've noticed, and if there's anyone out there who is an aspiring writer, this is advice I would give, is that just because you've created a very thorough backstory for your character doesn't mean you've actually created a real human being who
Okay.
has, that's the point.
Okay, thanks. He normally charges $10 for that advice, by the way. That's free this time. What happened was Pendergast disappeared from our books for several years until, and to our own disadvantage, it turns out. And he came back with Cabinet of Curiosities. And since then, we've kept building his metaverse. You know, we like the idea of having characters from books like Thunderhead, which had nothing to do with Pendergast, wander into future books like Smithback, for example, or Nora Kelly, who became both huge figures in the Pendergast novels. And Pendergast himself remained a cipher, but people began to tell us, Pendergast is just, he's like Superman. You know, how come nothing happens to him? He never gets hurt, And so I think we unconsciously began to give more weight to his backstory, as Doug pointed out, his feelings, situations he's put in, people who come into his life and then don't leave for one reason or another. And Doug mentioned the story of the nailed door, and that was something I stuck in there as a joke, mostly for Doug. We like to drop little Easter eggs here and there for each other and see if they catch them, see if he catches them. And we thought, well, we have to give more of Pendergast's history in here because people want to know more about him. And so we began adding little hints, and the hints weren't enough. So we began introducing characters like Diogenes, like Dr. Lang, like many others. And now we have like a whole dust cloud of them, trailing behind us. Someday I see Mrs. Vincent d'Augusta. Well, so do we. He will come back, and we don't ignore our characters for long, unless they're dead, like Smithback. But anyway, so Pendergast has had to change and show a bit more emotion, a bit more depth, more color, I'd say. Doug, wouldn't you agree, as he's been tested more?
Yeah, I think he's become more of a fully rounded human being. In the beginning, he was pretty cold, severe, ascetic, astringent. He's become a little more human, a little warmer, a little more vulnerable, perhaps, as he gets older.
I'd like to add one more thing. I'm sorry. Um, Doug and I have a morbid fear of falling into a rut and writing not the same book over and over, but just, we getting comfortable in certain situations, and this character is going to go to a town and do this and that, and this will happen to him, so on and so on. And because of that, we're always testing each other. And as a result, Pendergast never stays still. He has to keep growing and has to keep changing, because either Doug or I would not allow it to change, to stay the way it is.
So he's a shark, has to keep moving.
Yes, that's a good metaphor.
All right, so I got to keep track of time here because I could just talk to you guys forever. I love how you guys play off of each other. I love the words. I love all of it. So let's talk about Bloodless. And you said Pendergast goes to different places, and lo and behold, Pendergast is in Savannah, Georgia. So it really shook me when I talked to you the first time because I hadn't read the whole book. And Savannah's a character. Savannah is a character in this book. So before we start talking about Bloodless, we were talking a little bit before we went live, and you both have been to the Savannah Book Festival in the past, not at the same time. So was this a no-brainer to bring Pendergast to Savannah eventually because you guys fell in love with the city when you were here, or has this been building for a while?
Well, it really was a no-brainer. Actually, what happened was Lincoln went to Savannah, and he called me up and he said, "Doug, this is one of the most wonderful and unique cities in America. It's absolutely fabulous." And then I got invited to the Savannah Book Festival and discovered the same thing. And it was Lincoln, though, who had the idea, look, we both love Savannah. We have a special feeling for that city. Let's set a thriller in that city. A little did we know that we'd be, oh God, I don't want to.
I know.
Little did we know how.
Something, and then I'm like, oops.
Yeah, okay. We won't talk about what happens to Savannah in the book, but it was Lincoln's idea. Now Pendergast is down in Florida in his last case, and Cold Moon is with him, and Cold Moon wants to go off to Colorado for his next posting with the FBI, and Pendergast wants to get back to New York, but their helicopter is diverted to Savannah, and this was in the last book, and Lincoln wrote that chapter, and I said, "Lincoln, what's going to happen in Savannah?" He said, "I don't know, but that's where our next novel is going to be." And I said, "Do you really want to lock us into this? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the next novel." He said, "Yes, I do." So I agreed with him. And then we started developing this novel, started brainstorming. And I'd always been fascinated with the D.B. Cooper hijacking. It's the only unsolved skyjacking in American history. You probably all know the story. About exactly 50 years ago, this fellow named D.B. Cooper hijacked a plane from Portland to Seattle, collected a $200,000 ransom, jumped out of the back of the plane with a parachute, and was never seen again. What happened to him? Did he survive? What? So I said to Lincoln, let's see if we can't build a novel on this mystery. And that's when we started talking. And it has to be set in Savannah, which is a long way from Seattle. So we did. And well, Lincoln, do you want to take it from there?
I'll just say that the D.B. Cooper was definitely Doug's idea. I barely heard of the guy, believe it or not, when he brought it up. Doug has 3 or 4 ideas that are similar to that. He's so widely read in historical peculiarities and strange events that he writes for the New Yorker, and so that comes naturally to him. And the biggest problem was, how are we going to tie these two things together in a believable or semi-believable way, and so make it a mystery? And I would definitely wanted it set in Savannah because I didn't want to see Pendergast get back to New York quite yet. I wanted at least one more case with Cold Moon, his assistant in the FBI, who he had two cases with in Florida. And I figured this way, if they're interrupted and forced to stop here, they would, have one more case together at least. And so we had to move from DB Cooper to Savannah and leave DB Cooper sort of hanging while we developed this Savannah's backstory, which was very easy to do because Savannah has so much character to it. It became probably the hero or heroine of the story. The hanging moss and all the parks and all this, just the terrible things that have happened there, the wonderful things that have happened there. And so, we made up the Savannah vampire, draining blood from everybody. And that too was Doug's idea. In fact, it was my idea to set it in Savannah, but what happens to Savannah, which I won't say, was Doug's idea. So,
And,
sure.
and by the way, lest you think Link just said a spoiler about the vampire, that's not a spoiler.
That's like the least. I cannot tell people how this is the epitome of a page turner because you don't know where it's going. You don't know, and it's great. I know there are a lot of people watching and listening in who are from different parts of the country. And if nothing else, I hope this makes them want to come to Savannah because I really love Savannah. I've lived here for 20 years. But this is my Savannah, even though it's fantastical. And I mean, I'm turning a page and I'm like, oh, I was there. Oh, that's exactly how it is. And now that I know both of you gentlemen had visited here, but you haven't spent a lot of time here. So Savannah really made an impression on both of you in just the short amount of time you've been here, correct?
I was there for about 3 weeks at Skidaway Island, and then for a week in the city itself. So that's only less than a month, but yes, it made a huge impression. The historic district is wonderful, and in fact, I visited there a weekend years before and loved it so much that when the book Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil came out, I was disappointed because this wonderful secret city has been discovered. But of course, it ended up being a very good thing for Savannah, because it allowed Savannah to restore a great number, I think, of buildings and become even more beautiful as a result.
Yeah. What about you, Doug? What drew you to Savannah?
Well, it was all those things. I've always been fascinated with history, and Savannah is just steeped in history. Every building, every street has a story, but also the Bonaventure Cemetery fascinated me. I was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts, across the street from the Mount Auburn Cemetery. And it's an absolutely gorgeous and huge cemetery. It's as big as Bonaventure with many beautiful tombs. And my mother bribed the gatekeeper, and so we could go in there and play as little kids. So I spent my first 5 years playing in a cemetery. And ever since then, I've been in love with cemeteries. And so I spent hours at the Bonaventure Cemetery photographing, walking around, absorbing the feeling of it, and thinking every second of the time I was there, thinking, wow, what a setting this would make for a novel. And of course, it did make a wonderful setting. I do apologize, though, for what happened in that cemetery. I really do. Lincoln and I both extend our deepest apologies to Savannah for that.
I love that teaser because everybody that's watching can see that little button at the bottom of the screen that says purchase Bloodless, and you got to read it to believe it. I can't even tell you. It's just, and the best part about it is this is a thriller. There are some fantastical things, but no matter what happens to Savannah in the book, I do believe that you guys have really shown a love for the city. I just think it's, and anybody listening can tell I love my city. It's kind of a love affair. But okay, so let's talk about this though. Where does Pendergast go from here? I mean, is he going back to New York?
Oh, wow, what a question.
That's difficult in many ways to answer because we don't want to spoil anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I see somebody has asked us, talk to me about Constance. Well, we've been getting lots of email about Constance, and we really can't answer it because we don't want to spoil anything. But what we can tell you is that the story we tell in this book continues. It's a standalone book. It's, the mystery is wrapped up. Savannah is whole once again, if anything ever happened to it. But the story continues, and I hope that helps to explain, at least in part, what happens.
Well, I think more than anything, people are like, "Yay, we're getting more." um, you talked about email. Your fans must be rabid, and must have so many ideas and opinions. What is that like? To hear from your fans about, I think this should happen, or why didn't this happen? I mean, what is that like for you guys?
Well, we love hearing from our fans, the ones who like our books. If you don't like our books, we don't like hearing from you. Don't email us. No. We actually,
But buy our books,
even criticism, if it's comes from the right place, is welcome. But one of the things about COVID is we haven't had a chance to see our fans in person for almost 2 years. But we're looking forward to going back out when all this is over. But we have fabulous fans. I mean, that is absolutely the case. I mean, they're really good readers. They have excellent literary taste, and we have to be very careful with them because they're so smart that they guess what's coming in our books much better than the average reader. So we have to fool them, and it's very difficult to fool them. They are always ahead of us. And I hope in this book, and I'm looking at your comments, by the way, everyone who's making comments, I can see them right here, but I hope that those of you who've read the books are going to tell us, I never saw that coming.
What about you think of that? What do you think about that, Lincoln? Is that just
Well, we tend to hear a lot when I saw that coming. I guessed it. Not that they say that often, but we don't often hear, darn, I didn't see that at all. But I think to Doug's point, we really miss interacting with our readers, face to face, because they're the ones who make it possible for us to do what we're doing, and if it wasn't for them, we'd be still in New York, unhappy in our jobs probably. They tell us things, what's wrong with our books, what they like about our books, and we try and take the criticism, constructively, because if we don't learn from them, what's the point of writing, and just the energy we get from them. And, I can see the energy on the screen, just as Doug can here, is what really, empowers us to move forward and keep the energy going. So that means a great deal.
Doug's making comments? Are you typing in comments over there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to say something.
Okay, I'm going to read down here.
No, well, isn't anything, but.
Okay.
He's ordering a pizza.
Yeah. I think we should do that. So what is it like when you do get to interact with fans and, you see that they've stood in line for a while and they want to, they have that book and they want to have you sign it and keep it forever? That's got to be like an author's dream.
It really is. And I mean, it's very gratifying to see that, because there was a time when we didn't have any readers. I think the only person who was buying our books was my mother and Link's mother, and that was it.
It's true.
And in fact, I did go to a book signing, and the only person who showed up was Link's mother. That is.
And I went to one of the Harvard Coop, and the only person who showed up was Doug's mother.
Because moms are cool.
They are so cool. But in the beginning, we were divided up. They didn't want to fly us together because the publisher didn't want to spend that money, so they divided us up.
I actually went to
like
a
president
book.
And vice president can't be in the same place at the same time.
Exactly. I went to a book signing on Long Island where there were no people at all.
Did you read to yourself? Did you just read to yourself?
I wandered around for 5 minutes and then slunk out.
Well, now let's talk about that, because when we were talking beforehand and when you were here for both of you individually for the Savannah Book Festival, and Link, you have some pictures you wanted to kind of show because you both had Stratton Leopold's ice cream flavors made for you, right?
Yes.
So y'all are gonna get a little inside scoop. Oh, I made a pun.
So to speak.
I didn't even mean to do that. So, but show us your
Yes.
picture.
What is the name of the store?
Leopold's ice cream. Look, isn't that adorable, you guys? He's got a picture with Stratton scooping out his own ice cream, and
It was
almost got chastised
crimson
for doing it, right?
strawberry. Yes, you know, he has at the book festival, he has all these flavors named after the books of people who were there, and our book that year was Crimson Shore, and so he had crimson strawberry sundae as a flavor, and I asked one of the people, "Oh, can I get behind the counter?" You know, no, you may not get behind the counter. You know, there are rules about such things. And then Mr. Stratton came wandering in and, you know, waved his magic wand, and I was behind the counter with a cap and a scoop, and it was a great occasion. He's a
That's a
wonderful
good
man.
memory. I know.
He's a
Okay,
great
so
guy.
Doug, what was your flavor?
Mine was for the Lost City of the Monkey God book, and it was called Monkey God Ice Cream, and it had lots of bananas and nuts in it. It was delicious, but I didn't get the picture behind the counter. I was too shy to try to go behind the counter. Also, there
Well,
was
let
a
me.
huge line of people waiting to
Yes,
get ice cream.
every
And
day.
by the time I got there, I thought I just better get my ice cream and get out of here because I don't want to hold things up.
I did wear plastic gloves and everything else, you know, so it was very sanitary. I just wanted to add one thing to your question about what it's like to interact with readers. I just recall one particular time where early on in our writing career, where um, I was doing a signing in New York City, and this woman came up with a kid, a son, who must have been no older than like eighth grade or something, and she said to me, "My son read Relic." And back when we wrote Relic, we didn't think it was going to get published. And so we indulged ourselves, you know, and crazy things happened. And there was a lot more swearing than there have been in recent books. And I thought, oh no, this is all the karma that I've accumulated and all the books I edited and turned down about to come back at me, you know, because, you know, her kid read this book and she said, "Thank you so much. This book has made my son want to be a writer." And so it's moments like that that really help us because, you know, we sit here in our offices um, months and months, you know, at a time, and we get no feedback except from each other. And you know, going out on the road, as painful as it is in some ways, really gives us the opportunity to interact with people, find out what they like, not like, and just re-energizes us. And so it helps us to realize that what we're doing here isn't just, you know, typing to amuse ourselves. I see
We
Doug
may
is
have lost
picking up his
Doug.
pizza right now, it
Yes,
looks like.
he
Yeah.
is. We may have lost him for just a
Normally it
second.
takes longer to get pizzas out in the woods of Maine where he is.
All right. Are we ready for some questions while Doug tries to reconnect? Link, you want to go ahead and answer some without him? Maybe you could,
Sure, of course.
Okay. So the first question is: do you enjoy doing the research for your roles for the novels?
Yes, we do. In fact, many times we have chosen subjects that force us to do research. For example, in Thunderhead, we had to do a lot of research about archaeology. Um, we also tend to do research on subjects that one or the other of us knows about already. Knows a lot about science. I know a lot about computers. And so we can always draw on the other one to bring something in if we need help with it. But yes, research is one of the fun parts.
Well, that leads right into our next question. This person is in Savannah, and they say, living in Savannah, I've never heard of the infamous Savannah vampire. Are you basing it on historical fact?
Well, I don't know. Should I be coy or shall I tell the truth here?
Well, Doug's not here, so he can't say
Okay.
yay or nay. So I will
Well,
say you tell exactly what you. Oh, I think he might be. Oh, there he is.
oh,
Sorry.
drat. I mean, great to have you back.
We were just
Listen,
about to spill some secrets here, Doug. So all right, I'm gonna ask the question again. We've already let Link answer one, so we'll let you do. All right, so this person says, living in Savannah, I've never heard of the infamous Savannah vampire. Are you guys basing it on historical fact? And Link was trying to figure out if he was gonna
Tell
expound
the
on that or
truth
not.
or not.
Well, the thing is that there are stories of vampires in Savannah. It's not, we talk about the famous Savannah vampire. Well, it's not quite so famous, but there are rumors and his stories about that. And of course, you know, what really happens in the end of our book is not a vampire at all. Maybe that's a spoiler, but I think you could probably figure that out. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to say any more actually.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think that's okay. All right, so I hope that answered the question. All right, we're just going to get into the nitty gritty here. You guys have, I have talked about this before, but when, we're not going to say if or should, but when Pendergast ends up on the big screen, who would you like to play the role?
That question has been asked ever since on the flood, basically. And the funny thing about it is it's a perfectly natural question. And as the years have gone by, and Doug and I have gotten into our dotage and anecdotage, um, the actors have aged out that we chose. Um, uh, for example, in the old days, it was Christopher Walken when he was young. Then it was Matthew McConaughey, and then it was Benedict Cumberbatch, and then I personally thought, I think it was my wife who mentioned that the guy who plays Loki on TV would be a great character, but I got some blowback about that just before this talk began. And somebody
Doug?
here says Anderson Cooper.
That's just because he's pale. That's just
Yes,
because he's pale.
yeah. I don't know if he's quite got the well,
Acting
no, I'm not
chops. He's a great
acting
journalist. Great
chops. Yeah,
journalist. Okay.
yeah,
So, Doug, what
acting
about you?
chops.
Who's your dream Pendergast?
Well, that's very difficult because I have such a clear vision in my own mind of what Pendergast looks like that it's really hard to see somebody else in that role. However, we did we did produce some trading cards, and we hired an artist to do Pendergast, and we made him. He painted a beautiful portrait of Pendergast, and we made him redo it like 5 times. And at the end, he just nailed it. He absolutely nailed it. That is Pendergast to me. But he's just a face on a trading card. We don't. He's not. He doesn't look like any actor on the screen. So I don't know how we can bring him to life.
Well, I'm going to blow your mind because, well, first of all, I was thinking maybe Daniel Craig, but he's too much like James Bond or whatever. But he's kind of got that, like, pale enough. But here, this person that asked this question said, all I can think of when I think of Pendergast is the actress Tilda Swinton. And says, of course, she is about. But think about it. She's transformative. She's actually played a male in a role a couple times. Got any opinions on that? Would that be something you guys would be like, oh, that's interesting, or nope?
I think that Pendergast, a female Pendergast, would be fantastic. We just rejigger the plot a little bit. I mean, I don't want to like endorse somebody else's work, but recently Doug and I just watched Mayor of Easttown, and we thought, wow, what a fantastic show that is! What great acting and writing, and there's so many great women actresses who could nail the part. Gillian Anderson, for example.
Ooh,
You
interesting.
know, he's a guy in the books, but that doesn't mean he should be one on the screen. What do you think, Doug?
Well, I'd be open to anything. I think the one thing about Pendergast is that he's sui generis. He's like no other. And so whatever actor that can capture that is the actor that I'd be in favor of, male or female, or a female playing a male. I mean, we had Linda Hunt, who starred in The Relic, and she, although she played a female museum director in Relic, she very successfully played a male role.
Won an Oscar.
Right,
Yeah.
she won an Oscar for it. She was fantastic. So I just have a very open mind about that.
All right. Well, here's another question about book to movie. How much control would you consider giving up for a movie?
100%.
No. The sad truth is that when you sell movie rights, unless you're John Grisham or Stephen King, you give up your rights. They will consult with you. They will ask you what you think, but they really don't care. And they're just going to go ahead and do whatever it is they're going to do. And so our feeling is, look, it's a bit of a crapshoot. They're going to take the book and they might make a great movie out of it. They might make a so-so movie, or they might absolutely make a terrible movie. But there's very little we can do to control that. I mean, I think it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that even better than a movie would be a television series.
Yeah, a long form television series, which almost happened to us. We got this close to having Cabinet of Curiosities become a long form TV series. And at the very last step of the relay race, somebody rubber stamped it. No.
Drop the baton.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, someone asks a very interesting question. Has Marvel influenced you at all? As in, if Marvel can get away with certain things, is there anything that's too fantastical for a Pendergast novel? I mean, we're dealing with vampires.
Well, I think one of the differences between our novels and Marvel characters, and this is not meant to be a criticism of Marvel at all, but we, even with our fantastical plots, we ground them in science. We have a scientific, carefully thought out scientific explanation for what's going on that's really not outre. I mean, what happens might be outre. I mean, obviously, Bloodless is very outre, but it's based on physics. And there are many physicists who, I won't say what they believe in because that'll spoil the plot, but many are the ending of Bloodless is absolutely based in standard physics.
And I'd like to add to that the character of Constance, whom some people might see as a superhero in some ways. I mean, at the end of Blue Labyrinth, what she did to the Brooklyn Botanical Garden was, little short of the Fantastic Four. But even Constance and her backstory is totally grounded in science. It's just that unfortunately, a lot of people haven't read the exact order of books to make it clear what that backstory is. And we really don't want to write it up because it'll spoil it for many people, although it has been on our website in the past. But yes, as Doug said, we both collected comics as a kid. Batman was my favorite. But they're beyond a certain point, we won't go. It has to be at least remotely believable and scientifically credible.
Who was your favorite comic book person, Doug?
Oh, I loved Superman when I was very little. I wanted to be Superman.
Who didn't?
I know that's lame, isn't it?
Well, he can do everything. That's the problem. Silver Surfer, how about that?
Oh, I like that one. That's Fantastic Four.
That was a little after my time.
Oh, God.
What?
Okay, guys.
No.
See, this is what I love about you two. You crack me up. All right. So someone wants to know if Bloodless is available in audio, and that kind of goes with a few questions that people have. Do you choose who does the audio version of your books?
No, we don't. Our publisher produces those, and we are not involved in that at all.
I can never say this poor man's name. I love this actor, Rene Auberjonois.
Auberjonois.
Thank you. I don't speak French. A lot of people here loved to hear him read your books. So now that can't happen anymore. So do you does it bother you when you hear an audiobook if you're not really into who's reading it?
It's sort of like seeing yourself in a movie or hearing your voice on, it's
Same.
you sort of wince a little bit just because those are your words. Um, Doug and I also really miss Renee, although we didn't know him well at all,
Hmm.
and hope that ultimately we can find somebody, whether that person is reading them now or not, that people are happy with, because you have to like the voice if you're going to be with living with it for 40 hours.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Someone asked a question and it is technically a spoiler, so I'm going to kind of peg off of that. They ask about a certain character who dies in a book, and my thing is, since I don't want to spoil anything, I'm not even going to say which book they were asking about. What is that like when you have to kill off a beloved character? I mean, is that something that you struggle with? Or is it just if it's for the story, then that's the best thing?
Well, we did struggle with that. The character you're speaking of is one of our favorite characters. He's kind of a little bit like us in a way. And we got emails from readers saying, "Oh, I don't like that character. Why don't you get rid of him?" And we were offended. It's like, well, you know, that's sort of based on us. But the point of it was we did not want anyone in our novels to be safe. We wanted the reader to understand that anyone could die, that nobody was safe. I mean, we all know that in a lot of thrillers, you always know in the beginning of the book who's going to die and who isn't,
Hmm.
because, the bad guy is a sleazy lawyer, he's going to die, but the hero is not going to. So we wanted to sort of upset that and put readers on notice that anyone could die. Now, we were at another point, this is not a spoiler, but we were thinking of killing Nora Kelly. I mean,
Margot,
not Nora Kelly, sorry,
Margot Green.
Margot
Whoop,
Green.
whoop.
And Lincoln and I argued about it, and finally we said, well, listen, we went on a bulletin board that is devoted to talking about Pendergast in the books, anonymously lurking. And I did this. And I wrote as an anonymous lurker, I said, I heard a rumor that the guys were going to kill Margot Green. What do you think about that? And we got such a flood of furious, angry pushback. No, absolutely not. I'll never buy a book again if they do that, etc. So we decided, well, okay, we're going to spare her life this time.
Okay, so we learned that Doug is a troll. So don't ever.
Yes. And he lurks on a variety of websites that I can't talk about.
Oh my gosh, you guys crack me up. All right, here's something. I mentioned Daniel Craig a second ago for Pendergast, and this question is kind of cool. It says, when someone mentioned Daniel Craig, it reminded me, what did you two gentlemen think of Knives Out? Because they felt like that detective was very inspired by Pendergast. I didn't even think of maybe that's why it kind of sunk in. Did you see the movie? Did you have any thought on that?
I did see the movie, and it's interesting you should mention it because that movie was filmed in one of the Honeywell mansions, which was just around the corner from where I grew up in Wellesley, Massachusetts. At least the outside of it. The inside, I don't know where that
Mhm.
was, but the outside of it was a house that I knew, and that was pretty amazing. But yes, I have to say, I noticed a very strong resemblance to Pendergast, and I was a little perturbed by it, but also somewhat flattered.
Um, I'm sorry, I'm blanking out here, but there was another film where the hero strongly reminded me of Pendergast. Boondock Saints, that's what it was
Mhm.
called, where Willem Dafoe plays the FBI agent, and he's well dressed and he listens to opera while he's looking at the bodies, and I thought, wow, that could be Pendergast doing that almost. There were some things he did that I don't think Pendergast would have done, but like making some cop get a bagel for him. But anyway, every now and then we will either see someone or a tick, or a mannerism that says that's Pendergast, or else we'll hear from friends, "Hey, did you see that TV show? That was a ripoff of XYZ." So comes with the territory.
We have one person who is a little upset that they can't get your books in Mexico sometimes, some of them. Is there a reason that their books are available? I mean, I would think with Amazon, they can go get a book anywhere, but it says they weren't able to buy, it says the last book they were able to buy was Fever Dream. So
Was
that's
this
been a
in the
while.
Spanish
It says,
language or
s-
in English?
I'm not sure. It says all Mexican fans have to import them from Spain if we want to get the Pendergast series. So they wrote
Oh,
the question in English. So I mean, is that something you guys have any control over where your books are available?
we don't have any control, and that's kind of disturbing. I mean, we do have huge following in Spain. I was looking at our statistics for our website, our not our website, our fan page on Facebook, and New York City was the number one city, and then came Phoenix, and then the third city where our people or fans are from is from Madrid, and then a couple of cities down, it's Barcelona. So we have a lot of fans in Spain. So why the books
Well,
aren't
that
available in
I was gonna say,
Mexico
yeah,
is, yeah.
they're getting their books from Spain, so that's pretty cool. All right, I have to ask one. I got one last question here. When will you have another Jeremy Logan book? I like that they don't say, "Is there another Jeremy?" They're like, "When? When will you have another Jeremy Logan book?"
Thank you. I'm sorry, Doug, for answering this question about a solo book. I'll make it short. Thank you for the interest. I'm very aware of the interest. The book is almost done. And in fact, I read the newspaper every day in fear that somebody else will come out with a book with the same idea. So I can't talk about it, but it's got a title and it's 80% done. And as I said in one earlier conversation, the next time Doug and I have a book coming out, which is a Corey Swanson or a Kelly book coming out early next year, I'll have a date for you.
Okay. Oh, Erica, early next year. What's going on early next year? That might be the Savannah Book Festival, and fingers crossed that everything's going to make sure that we can have everybody here. So, I think that's all the questions that I have right now, guys. I have had so much fun talking with you. I just find that. I'll be honest with you. Before I talked with you guys a few weeks ago, the books that I had read, I wouldn't have thought you guys were as cool and hip as you are. I would have thought you'd been like, kind of little, research and I don't know, maybe some vampire nerds or something. I don't know, but you just are so delightful to talk to. Oh, that sounded terrible. I hope that was a compliment. I hope you took it as a compliment.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
It kind of circled
right.
around my head and came back, and Pat.
I know it takes me a while. Sometimes I have to like bring the plan in and land. So, all right, guys. That is all the time we have today. I could have talked to you forever. And oh, real quick, one person said they had a question, but it was a definite spoiler. Is there a way your fans can reach you to talk about things like offline? Can they ask questions on the website? Can they, send you an email? How does that work if somebody doesn't want to spoil something for somebody, but is still dying to know something from you guys?
Well, you can send us an email from the website, and we do try to answer all our emails. Sometimes it takes us a while, but we definitely do try to answer every email.
There you go. That's how you get your question. That's how you get your spoiler questions answered. So, all right, Doug and Link, on behalf of the Savannah Book Festival, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us about Bloodless and your work. Viewers can sign up for the Pendergast File, a monthly strangely entertaining. I love that newsletter from the authors at their website, PrestonChild.com. The authors welcome visitors to their Facebook page where they post regularly. And I want to say thank you to the festival folk for giving me the honor one more time of being your moderator tonight. The next virtual event is Wednesday, September 22nd with Kyle Mills, live streaming from Spain. Maybe he can get us some Pendergast books. That sounds fun. All right, be sure to check the events page on savannahbookfestival.org for details. The festival is a nonprofit, so please give generously to ensure it can go on for years and years, because you guys make a donation on the website, and that is what keeps going. Oh, and one last thing. Buy your book right there. See, right at the bottom of the screen, it says Purchase Bloodless. Go there and do it now, or buy it from your local bookseller.
And Chris, I want to thank you for being such a great moderator / hostess. You did a great job. Asked wonderful questions. Your enthusiasm was infectious. Thank you all for tuning in, all 405 of you. And on behalf of Doug and myself, thank you to our readers. We owe it all to you. And we just heard that Bloodless will be a #1 New York Times bestseller Sunday. So again, thank you all.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing our little city, our beautiful city, to the light. It's the new Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. People are going to come here to see our city because of Bloodless. So thanks, guys. Have a
And
great
Savannah,
night.
sorry,
Thank you, Chris.
and thank you.
Bye now. Have a good
Bye
night.
bye.